Hi, this is Judge Herb Dodell. If you're paying any attention to the news these days, you see a lot of people are threatening to or are actually taking what they call the Fifth Amendment. What is the Fifth Amendment? Well, the Fifth Amendment is added to the Constitution. After the founders of the Constitution wrote it all up, some of them had additional ideas they wanted to add. And so the First Amendment deals with free speech and the right to assemble. The Second Amendment, which you hear about all the time now, deals with possession and use of guns and the right to bear arms. That's what it's called, bear arms, or armed bears, whatever you are thinking about at the moment. But the fact of the matter is that the Fifth Amendment is there to prevent the government from taking advantage of your testifying against yourself in any kind of proceedings. Now, the Fifth Amendment is available in both civil and criminal cases. People think it's only criminal. It's not. You can take the Fifth Amendment in a civil case, although it can be mentioned to a jury that you're taking the Fifth Amendment in a civil case, but it cannot be mentioned in a criminal case. In other words, if you don't testify, and as I've said repeatedly, I rarely put on a criminal defendant to testify. Why? Because they usually shoot themselves, not literally, but they usually have inconsistencies. They're impeached in cross-examination. They don't always remember it right, and they may not even present well to a jury. They may come across as very arrogant and not likable. I had a client who was really unlikable. He came late all the time. I don't know a whole lot about it, but I think he was on something when he was there because he was sweating profusely and he never came on time. The jury hated him. And so you put somebody like that on the stand, you run a big risk. So the Fifth Amendment allows you to say, I refuse to testify on the grounds that I might incriminate myself. What's the risk? Well, I used to think in my early days after I left the district attorney's office that if you take the Fifth or you don't testify, which is basically the same thing, the jury will think, oh, he must have done it, she must have done it, because if they were really innocent, they would have got up there on that witness stand and under penalty of perjury and under oath they would have admitted it. But in actuality, the public has gotten used to it. And so they don't think much about them not testifying anymore. It probably makes very, very little difference. Sometimes you have to do it, and I think Harvey is going to find himself in that position because his defense is consent. If he doesn't testify in this criminal case, how's he going to prove consent? Because the other side is going to say, no consent. So in that case, and if he has many people who are complaining about him, and they're arguing no consent, the more of those, the less likely he's going to be believed. So he's really caught between the rock and a hard place. It'll be interesting to see how Ben Brafman, who's a very good lawyer, is going to deal with all these issues of consent. You didn't have that discussion with Cosby because he basically drugged him, and he admitted it. And that's even an example of an admission which gets in as an exception to the hearsay rule. Remember we talked about the hearsay rule? Well, there are other rules to keep evidence out beside the Fifth Amendment. One is called Section 352 in California. It means it's overly prejudicial, it's time-consuming, and it might confuse the jury, as well as questions of admissibility. Evidence is a very complicated subject, and most lawyers, unless you're in the courtroom often, don't really get it, at least not enough to be meaningful. You got to know the rules. So when you pick a lawyer, make sure they know the rules. I'm going to talk about how to pick a lawyer in one of our next sessions. In the meantime, if you got any questions, get in touch with me. You can reach me at askjudgeherb@gmail.com. I talk about most of this, with some great stories, by the way, in the book From the Trench to the Bench, available on Amazon. It's navigating the legal system and finding a spiritual path along the way. And we're going to talk about spirituality in some of our other sessions as well. Anyway, we hope to see you again real soon.